Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today while we talk about the new BI reporting that Function Point just released just over a month ago now. We're really excited to get started. I'm going to give about another minute or so. We still have some people starting to log on. So please stay tuned. We will be starting in just a minute. Okay, everybody, let's get started. So hi again. So I am Sophia Wilson. I'm here on the customer success team here at Function Point, and I am joined by my absolutely wonderful colleague, Jimmy Wu, who is our Director of Business Development here at FP. And we are really excited to be talking with you guys about our new BI reporting that's just been released. Now, before we dive too far into the agenda, Jimmy, I just want to check in. Are you able to hear me loud and clear?
Yes, I definitely can, and hopefully you can hear me as well.
I can. It's always great to hear your voice. So anyone, if you are having any trouble hearing us, please just slack it on through into our questions box. We want to make sure that you're able to participate in this webinar as we go. Now, what we're going to talk about today throughout our new reporting is I'm going to give an overview of our reports. So everyone on the call should be pretty familiar with the reporting we have right now. And what we really want to talk about is the navigation as well as the new features that have been released into the new reporting for you that will hopefully be able to make you and your team more efficient and more profitable because you'll have greater insight into all your reporting. With that, I'm going to go through some of our reporting favorites. So those reports that you already know and love that were in our standard reporting, we have pulled those through into our new reporting, and just some of the new capabilities that you have while using those reports. And then we're actually going to have Jimmy walk us through some new reporting. So he's always asked some of the craziest questions on some of the reports that prospects and customers would like to see. And so he's going to show us just what he was able to create by using the new reporting. So we're quite excited about that as well. Now, questions. You should see a questions box that will be living on your GoToWebinar control panel. Please type those in as you go. Myself and Jimmy will be answering those questions as we go through the webinar today. Anything Jimmy thinks that we should actually tackle on screen, he'll be sure to pause me so that we can go through that. Again, everyone has such great questions. We want to make sure that they all get answered. Learning and more, we do have lots of skill development and tools available to you. So I will point out just our help center that's available to you at any point. But please utilize those. We do have user docs that have also been now made for the new BI reporting tool. So you can use that as you go through while you're learning the new tool. It's just a really great reference on what each button kind of means, even though we will be reviewing that today as well. And then, of course, most of you are aware we do have these webinars as an ongoing series. The next one we will be hosting is a couple weeks from now on January 23rd, and it's Invoicing Made Easy. I will actually be hosting that one as well, and we'll be tackling invoicing specifically for retainers as well as some of your reoccurring billing. So please feel free to join that. You should be able to register directly from your login page as you're logging into your Function Point system. Okay, great. So why don't we dive in? So really, to kind of get started with the reporting in Function Point, something that I always kind of like to say as a cautionary tale to everyone on my team, as well as to our customers, is that you are only going to be able to pull from Function Point what you put into it. So making sure that you kind of cover the basic checklist to make sure that you are entering the data that you are looking for so that we can pull it. With the new reporting, we have added in some new features around adding in your own columns as well as calculated columns. Don't worry, I will be showing you those very shortly. So if you have that data in Function Point, you will be able to pull it in the new reporting, as well as in some of the previous reporting as well. So please make sure that if there's anything that you feel like you're missing, never hesitate to reach out to your customer success manager or the customer success team in general. We're here to make sure that your system is set up so that you can be successful. So those top items for myself, of course, are services, rates, and costs. If you have any questions around those, don't hesitate to reach out. Now, to get into the reporting itself, when you log into your Function Point system, you'll always see the Reports tab up here in the top right-hand corner. So this has not changed. For those of you that were really comfortable with the old standard reports, we haven't removed them. They are still here and available to you within your Function Point system. So if you are still used to pulling those for your regular meetings, don't worry, they're all still there. Eventually, we do plan on phasing it out. However, that won't be happening until the BI reports are completely are completed in the most simplest way of saying it. However, this right now is our MVP of the BI reports, and we do plan on continuing to develop it over the next year or so, and probably more years to come after that. So to get into your BI reports, you will just have to click on this. It will take you to a new tab. So I'm just going to double click so I can have my Function Point open at the same time. Now, when you come into your new BI reports, it will take you through a few of a step process. Now, you'll actually be able to access all of the different reports over here on the left-hand side. So we took the 28 most used reports that we found that our customers were using, and that's where we started when it came to building out the reports. So those reports that you are that you know and that you are used to, that is what we have created as the basis of the reports in here. But what you're going to be able to do is continue to customize those to work more specifically for your agency. We do hope in the future to have customized reports from scratch, but we thought that this would be a good way to kind of get started with some of the reporting. Now, you can also click underneath the all and be able to just pull absolutely any report that you are looking for. What I'm going to start by pulling today is actually going to be a new report that was built. And I personally am quite excited by this because it was one of the top asked for reports from our FP customers and family here, where everyone really loved being able to have those job find pages, but they wanted to be able to drill it down to the service level. So with those services, how much did I estimate per service? Did I actually hit that? Was I under or over? You know, was it my design team or maybe my accounts team that's using up the most amount of time for some of these customers? So we now have the ability of being able to drill into that. And that is actually by utilizing this new job data report at service level. So what this page will now take you through is a three-step process, actually. So the first step is choosing the report. The next will be defining your data. So I've decided that I would like to pull this service level report for myself. But you know what? I actually only want to pull all my open jobs. So that's what I'm going to start by pulling today, and we'll continue. Now, then you're going to pick your visualization. So we have our table and our pivot grid. Now, something you're going to notice on this pivot grid is that it does say premium on it. So there will be a few premium items that we will be pointing out today. So these will come at an extra cost for you later on. Right now, you will have access to everything, as well as today on the webinar, we will be reviewing the new BI reporting, including all capabilities in it, so that you have an understanding of what you could have access to later on. So please take notes of those premium items because that is what our team really has spent the most time being able to build, to be able to provide our team and customers with the data that you're really looking for and more functionalities. So to start, I'm going to just pull this data in a table view, just so I can actually have a bit of a dump of all the data. So to start, it's going to just pull the table visualization, and you can go through and see what's been clicked or not clicked. For today, I'm going to leave absolutely everything. You can go in and make items non-visible later on as well. So this has now brought me to the table view of that job data report at the service level. So you'll see that it is very similar to a lot of those find and list views that you're used to in your function point system right now, and is pulling a lot of the same data that you're used to as well. But now this is where it's going to start getting into where you have the capabilities of making changes and edits as you need. So to kind of get started with that, you know, the usual sorting that we know and love, maybe what I'm going to want to do is actually sort just by service. So we can now just pull everything in relation to archiving, all the time that has been input against archiving, and then we can actually feed back into what job, what project, and then what company that's all connected to. As we move through, we'll be able to see the different financials that by default have been chosen, but don't worry, we can go ahead and change those. Something else we're able to do on these pages is actually rename these groups now as well. So if you wanted to come in here, we could go ahead and rename this service hourly, and we'll edit that, and that will now automatically update for ourselves. So if there are any new titles that you're wanting to give to your reporting, you do have those capabilities. Now at this point, when we first pulled the report, I pulled by just by everything that was open. If we wanted to filter by anything else, we do have that ability still through this column header. So as we click through everything, we can edit these. So maybe with the service hourly, I'm really just wanting to look at everything in regards to design. I'm just wanting to analyze all my design items. So once we confirm that, it will then filter that to only show all the services related to design and the time and data that's been tracked to that right now. So that, of course, don't worry, you're still able to filter as you go. Now for my next item, I'm just going to clear that so that we have all the data again. Then what we're able to do is add in columns. So again, similar to what you're used to with the job finds at the moment, is being able to manage your columns and add in different items. So that is still a capability within the new reporting, except probably what you'll find is there's a whole lot more data that you're able to now pull. The manage columns did have a few restrictions on it, where this one doesn't have quite as many. It's almost a little bit overwhelming with how much you're now able to pull. So as we go through, you'll be able to go through and pull the activity date, which should be all time material that's been put against that within a specific date range. So that would be more of a filtering item, not necessarily something that we would want in the columns, but maybe with the estimate. I don't have the account executive on here. So let's make sure that we actually add in that account executive. I want their full name, not their staff initial. You'll notice as I click the plus button at this level, it did pull both selections in for me. So if you do find that that happens, it's as easy as just clicking out to be able to then pull in that name. So that we'll just add that in for now to kind of get started, and we'll confirm that. And now by default, it will automatically just drop it down here at the end, but you do have the ability to click and drag these as we need. Oh, and I do apologize. I already had the AE in there, so that was not the best example, but it does help me in the next piece I'm going to kind of show you, which is to show and hide some of those columns. So what we can come in here and is I'm going to find that company. I don't have that search capability in here. So as you get used to it, you'll start realizing where everything lives. As you can tell, I am still slightly getting used to it myself, and I do apologize for that. Okay. Well, we're going to just leave that one at the end for now. But again, one of the more premium features that everyone is more excited about is, of course, the calculated columns. So as you're used to being able to add the new columns, you now have the ability to add calculated columns. So this is a little bit more unique and a pretty exciting new feature. So as we come into adding in those calculated columns, you're then going to be able to find all those different data sets and the abilities in here to be able to specify how you would like to calculate those, whether it's plus, minus, multiplication, division. And then you can just go through and do that. So what I'm just gonna create a pretty basic one today of just our estimated internal service. Here we go. And then I just want to minus by the actuals. You know what? I'm going to start this again. I want the estimated totals. There we go. So I want that estimated total minus the actual total. Okay, so that still works. Perfect. So you will need to just give it a column's name. So that's a good one just to also make sure that you are entering in here. And we're just going to confirm this. And that new calculation will show for you down here. So you'll also be able to tell which ones are new calculated columns because it will have this prefix just up here in that column name for you. Awesome. So Jimmy, I did see a few questions come in. Is there anything that you think we should tackle on screen or any good questions just in relation to some of this functionality or just in anything in general that you would like to add?
Yeah, so there are a couple questions, and I think when I go through a couple real examples of the reports that I've built, that they would be answered. I think I also sent an answer to one of the questions about documentations with the actual link of where that help article is for the new BI tool. So feel free to take a look at that after this.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, something for the greater group to know. We are recording this session, so we will be sending a follow-up email with that, and I'll make sure that the new BI reporting user document is also added into that follow-up email as well. So you'll have very easy access to it. Okay, awesome. So that is really some of the most basic functionality in there. Now, what I'm going to show is how we can change this table view into our data report, our pivot report. So that can be done just by coming up here to the table view and changing it into a pivot grid. This is when you're now going to set up your pivot grid. So where you will then build what your rows, columns, and the specific data that you want. So of course, through that previous table view, there was a lot of data that was available to you. And this will now allow you to kind of filter it down to what maybe is more relevant to that exact time. So with our rows, what I'm going to want to do is, of course, I'm going to want the company. I'm going to add that in there. I want the job. And I want the service itself. And this is where you're also going to notice how I had renamed that service title. It has spread itself throughout the entire reporting area. So that is why this is now labeled as service hourly rather than just basic service. Now within the columns, what I'm going to want is I'm going to want a date. So I'm going to put in the delivery date because I want to be able to take a look at the estimated and the actuals that had been expected to be delivered within specific date ranges. And then we can actually filter by those date ranges too. But within the data, what I want is the estimated subtotal. I want the actual subtotal. I want to look at what we've invoiced. And let's get started here to kind of get started. And let's confirm that. So this does pull quite a big report for you. Now, as we go through this, we can expand. So I'm going to look at Furry Creek Golf Academy here. We're going to expand this, and now we see the different jobs that are related to Furry Creek. So we had 3 within the span of 2019 that we want to be able to look at. And then within the Pro Shop brochure, we can then expand that by the different services that were provided for that piece of work. And then through those, we can now see the breakdown of that estimated subtotal, that actual subtotal, and then what had actually been invoiced for at this point. So it gives you that nice overview of everything here. And then, of course, we do total up everything through that grand total. And then, of course, at the company level as well. Now, if we're wanting to drill in even further, again, with these date ranges that have been put in, we can now expand by quarter. So we've got 2019, the quarters, and then, of course, those specific months with those quarters as well. So now, again, we see with that archiving that this was all done within January of our first quarter in 2019. So we still have that breakout for you. Now, of course, this is a lot of data here. You may find that you're not wanting to look at it drilled this much. So again, play around with these different columns and row options available to you so that you can continue to manipulate and, again, show it how you want. Of course, a lot of individuals that have been working with these reports are probably fairly familiar with creating pivots directly in Excel. So we're really just hoping that this is going to be easier and allow you to continue to create your pivot reports just directly in your function point system rather than needing to export it and make those changes. However, if you did want to export it, you do have that capability just up here through the menu. So you can export. It will export it at the expansion that it is currently at. So if you're wanting everything, just making sure that everything is expanded for you so that it does export that way. Great. Now, of course, this is maybe my most ideal pivot. Something else that has always been talked about with some of our customers is that they wish that they didn't have to create their reports absolutely every single time that they would want to pull a report. So what you do have now is the saving abilities. So when you come up here to menu, you can now save as, and this will pull up your new report for you. So this is, again, one of those premium features that has been created in the new BI reporting. So I just wanted to touch on that. But what you can do is you can give it a report title, change it up. So I'm just going to say pivot or ideal pivot. And then in a pivot format. So you can even elaborate on the report description for yourself. Again, we've just done some basic descriptions to put in with all of your reporting. But of course, you have the ability to adjust those, again, to match you and your agency more, or if there's some kind of note you need to make yourself on when you need to be pulling these or so on and so forth. So you do have the ability to now edit those rather than just go off of our basic reporting decisions. Perfect. So now what you'll find is that as we exit so with this exiting, this is something else I should just point out, is you can choose to select a new report, go back to dashboard, which will actually take you back to your original function point system, or log out of FP. So that will log you out completely out of everything. So for right now, I'm just wanting to go ahead and select new report. And what you'll see underneath all, I'm going to just collapse this, underneath saved reports, these are all my individual saved reports that I have created for myself that I am going to want to reference at different times. But of course, if there's ever anything that you've created and you're not wanting to look at anymore, it's just as easy as clicking the X and that will be gone. Of course, something I always like to kind of let everyone know is when you do delete something in function point, it is deleted forever. It should warn you before you go ahead and delete something. So just make sure that you are ready to delete it. Unfortunately, we won't be able to recover items that you have deleted. Awesome. So before we dive into some of Jimmy's more elaborate reporting, I just kind of wanted to point out a couple of other things. So for with the reporting, we haven't gotten rid of some of our favorites. My top ones that I always recommend to people are our profit analysis report, the estimate actual invoice by company, project, and job, and then, of course, the staff utilization. So what I have done is I've gone ahead and created our profit analysis as well as our staff utilization reports within pivot grids. So again, it's just as easy as coming on in, clicking what I have saved now for that report rather than the original. And then I had already preset a date range when I had done it before. However, you can go ahead and change those. Just for today, I'm just wanting to take a look at the staff utilization within the month of December because I'm just sort of auditing everything going into the new year. And we'll go ahead and build that report. So what I did, how I organized it here is I didn't actually pull any percentages. I just did the hours targeted and then what everyone was able to hit for their total billable and total non-billable. And I did organize it by the role that they carry at the agency, as well as then their name, and then those available hours. So Brock, he had available hours of 168. Targeted hours 137.76, and then what he actually did was 24 billable and 32 non-billable. So he is certainly not hitting his targeted hours, it looks like, and that would then prompt to have a conversation with Brock about what he was doing throughout the month of December. But I think he was actually just on vacation, so that's why that didn't hit that. But of course, this now then feeds back into what and making sure that everything's up to date, making sure that all of your staff hours are correctly inputted into the work calendar so that these hours are correct for you for all of your reporting needs. Now, Jimmy, again, I'm seeing lots of questions coming in. Anything that we want to tackle on screen before we kind of hand it over into some of your more exciting reports?
Yeah, so I've just been answering quite a few of the questions that have come in. I think a couple questions will be also answered visually as I go through some of the sample reports that I've built from scratch. Okay, so I'm Sophie. If you want to pass the screen to me, I can start showing some of those reports. And there are a couple more questions. Maybe I'll let you handle those ones in the meantime.
Yeah. Sounds great. Okay, that has now been passed over to you, Jimmy. And all right, everyone, I'll get started on some of these questions and how I can help.
All right. Wow, welcome everyone. So as mentioned by Sophie earlier, I am Jimmy. I am the Director of Sales here. However, in my previous life, I used to actually be a project manager for a marketing firm as well. So definitely had a number of years of experience generating a lot of reports, pivot tables, whether it's internally for management or externally for client facing. So I'm going to go through about 3 to 4 reports, depending on how much time we have at the end. I will go through one that is more sales and business development related in relations to kind of sales pipeline and revenue analysis. I'll have another one more on job costing and analysis of that. Another one on staff, so revolving around utilization, efficiency, and last but not least, one on financials around things like accounts receivable, AR, who hasn't paid their bills, how you can quickly identify those. And then at the end, if you have certain reports you want to build, feel free once again to reach out to our supportive success team, and they'll be happy to help you out. But let's get into it. So I do have, as you can see, a number of saved reports on here. So these are all specific to myself. So let me go through the first one, revenue for the business. So a common question that comes up is, hey, how do I know how much revenue or potential deals I have coming up over the next certain period of time? So in this case, I'm pulling based on the pivot grid, but to let you know the source of the data, I've filtered it down to the different types, only a few types to keep the data a little bit cleaner, and also filter the date for Jan 1st to December 31st of 2018, and that are currently in review or submitted. So this is actually generated from an estimate report, originally, as I'm looking for future potential revenue. So that's why my approval status is in review or submitted. So you can see I have a lot of different fields on here, including the company name. I just renamed it to brand, as that was what that agency was used to. I also, you can see the budget, which is the actual estimate, and the delivery date, and the potential month will close, and the value of those estimates. So creating it in a pivot table, you can now see on the left-hand side, I have all the different type of jobs for that people potentially buy from me. So I can see I have 6 different ones, and with a total sales pipeline of $64,917 in 2018. I can drill this down further by expanding the date at any point, and you can drill it down based on the quarter, the month, or the year. Okay. And from this point on, in this report, you can quickly see, what are people buying from me? So I can quickly tell that brochure and TV ads are the 2 top of jobs that people buy. But I can, of course, change this up. Some people, instead of asking what type of deliverables people buy from us, they might want to look at it by a company example. So you can easily set up your pivot grids instead of by type. I'm now going to go by the client name instead. And you can, of course, drill down further to both what that specific company is buying from me. So now on the left-hand side, I now have it changed where it's the individual companies, and I can see Furry Creek Golf Academy only buys brochure from us, Great Atlantic Insurance, same idea, and whereas Pro Foods actually bought banner, signage, and TV ads from us. So that's a pretty straightforward sales pipeline type of data. So yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. But let's go into something that is more job related. So a common job costing report people have, of course, is, like Sophie mentioned before, by not just the client, the job itself, but also by the services that you saw earlier. But another common one people ask for is actually by the staff. I want to look at who is actually used for the specific jobs, and also how much time they spent and how much that affected our budget. So you can see on the left-hand side, and so in this case, I've actually pulled a job report, which will include data such as your timesheets, the hours that you've spent, the rate, the cost of those individual staff, etc. So I've included those information. You can start this from probably a timesheet report as well, because if you think about from a data perspective, your timesheets are going to include everything from the staff that used it, the client, the job, the service they used, and the cost and the rates as well. So both. So there are times when you generate a report, you can start from different type of base reporting. So now that I have all the data around the date, the timesheets for those jobs, in my pivot grid, I've now organized it so that my rows are jobs and the services, and the columns are the individual staff, showing how many hours and the cost of those hours. So if I expand on, say, the corporate website here, you'll see all the different services associated to that. And only Alon Savvy and Chris Wilson are the 2 individuals that have spent hours working on this. Okay. So that's another sample type of report. Really, you can look at your job costing with this new report any shape, way, form you want within the system. By the client, by the project, by the job, by the task, by the individual, and all the associated rates, dollars, and hours to that. Okay. So really cool stuff. I really like that one. But let's talk about staff efficiency. So this is another interesting report. A lot of, especially as you start to grow, you have more and more employees. You want to know, hey, is everyone putting their weight in? Is everyone working efficiently, and who is underperforming? So we have what's called a staff efficiency and profitability report. So when people think about staff efficiency, they're thinking usually about, okay, I assign you a task. I gave you 10 hours to do it. Did you spend less or more than 10 hours to do that? Okay. So in that case, this would be the base report I put it from was the task itself. And I will be able to see for each task what the budgeted hour is and the actual hours they've spent, and the service and which job that it is for, and the billable value towards it. Now notice I have 3 calculated columns as well at the end, where it says task budget billable, actuals billable, and the billable variance. So, and these calculated columns, you can quickly identify those because they'll say a function on that column itself. Now, if, to show you what that calculated column represents, I've actually included data of the budgeted hours for those tasks and the hours spent, and I want to know the value of those hours. So what I'll do is, in this case, I took the service rate, multiply it by the budgeted hours, which will give me the budget billable value of that task. Okay. And when you create this calculated column, you can decide whether it's a decimal, percentage, or currency as well. And when I created the actual billable value, I basically did the same thing, but what I did is took the actual hours spent and multiply that by the service rate, okay, to get my billable value of the hours, those task hours. Now, to get the variance, this is where it might be a little bit trickier. So to get the variance between the actual billable and the budget billable here, the first train of thought is to take the difference between these two columns. However, what happens is in the calculated columns, the formula does have to originate from a function point existed field. So what I've done here is I redid the formula for the budget billable, which is the budgeted hours for that task versus the rate for that task, subtracted by the actual hours spent for that task and the rate for that task. So I did combine the two formulas together to get the variance. Okay. So just kind of a heads up for you when you build the calculated columns. But now that I have all the data sets I want, let's take a look at what that pivot graph looks like. So hopefully you don't have any designers or production people behind you looking at this, because I think it's quite powerful. On the left-hand side, I can see each individual over the course of the time for each quarter or each month, how many hours they've spent. So I'm just going to look at 2018. So you can see Alon here has 344 hours. The billable value of those hours is 31,000. He actually went under budget 340 hours. So he's actually worked more efficient than I expected. And those hours billable value is at 32,000. Now notice that billable value might be higher because depending on how you set up your function point system. In this case, I've set up my system actually is based on, the billable value is based on the staff service rate, which is why you see a difference between the two values. Because Alon might be one of my senior, and as a result, he has a higher billable rate than the original estimate. So another interesting data set here is notice the task hour variance. So even though he is 4 hours more efficient than I expected, the billable variance is actually negative though. So that's, to me, tells me that Alon might be really good at more junior things because he goes under budget on services that have a lower billable rate. But for services that have a higher billable rate, he actually goes over budget. Okay, so he might be a junior transitioning into a senior, hence that data. So notice how I've also broken it down, and I can probably try to justify that by looking at the different services he does and where he specifically goes under or over budget to help understand, hey, you know what, maybe Alon is really is not as good at copywriting as he goes over budget on that, but he is better at, say, designing, imaging, illustration, for instance. Okay. So hope that gave people a little bit of an idea. You can, of course, also generate things like task reports around this as well. Okay. So I have another report specifically around invoicing. So a common challenge for a lot of agencies is you get a lot of rush jobs. People come to you, they're like, hey, I need to do this tomorrow. They're an existing client, you've worked with them for a long time, so your project manager and accounts people are naturally going, yep, we'll do it for you. We'll get started tomorrow, no problem. And then your accounting team suddenly goes like, well, actually, they've done this to us so many times, they haven't paid any of their invoices. So there's that lack of communication, and it's hard at times if that payment information resides in, say, QuickBooks or accounting system. So if you do utilize our QuickBooks integration, you can easily generate an AR report inside Function Point. So in this case, I've generated an AR report, and because it's relating to invoice and payment, I pulled this with a baseline from an invoice report. So you can see every single invoice, which company they are with, which job it's for, and the amount with the total, the balance, and yeah, and also how much they've paid. So you can then at this point generate a pivot table. So in my pivot table, what I've done is on the left-hand side, I have all the clients and the year, and you can quickly see what the invoice value is and how much they've paid and the balance. Now, if you just want to look at your own jobs or your own staff, then of course you can quickly filter and let's see. So I might only look for things that are where I am the account executive. So I'm going to add that column very quickly and filter by the estimate staff initial, maybe for myself. And I am pulling this. I'm not really sure which one of these. There you go. Okay, so you can see the data set has now shrunk quite a bit based on the account executive name that I've just filtered. So as you play around with the pivot grid, it's oftentimes feel free to use the filter. I personally like that a lot. It updates the data right away for me. And then you can also export this into a PDF, into an Excel spreadsheet and share it with your client or management. The other cool thing about this AR report is, let's say Great Atlantic Kingsgate Driving School. High AR here at $26,000. So, you know, without the finance team, you can have your PM or your account team really quickly explain, hey, you know what, I would love to start that rush job for you, but you know, you do have some bills you haven't paid, and they probably don't know off the top of their head, so you can pull this information out right away and expand that as you see fit. Okay. So going back to, so I want to show one last report here, also around invoicing. So another common question that finance and accounting team asks is, how do I, especially if you're doing a lot of work that is time and materials, you're going to want to know, hey, are there any timesheets or expenses I did not bill the client? Okay. Very common issue, because that's real. You have to make sure you bill every single timesheet. That is lost revenue if you miss it. So we have, where is it? Okay. Right here, remainder to be invoiced. So this is also an invoicing report. What I've done is I've taken, actually, I apologize. This is a job report. So I've taken I can see for each job, okay, I've took a look at what my billable value is for a service based on the service as well as the amount. And then you can see what I've invoiced. So this is actually, and I apologize, I'm looking at all fixed fees that I have yet to bill, not for time and materials. So if you want to look at time and materials, instead of looking at the estimated amount, you would just look at the actual amounts instead. So, and then I've created a column called remainder to be invoiced, which is just taking the total of my estimate subtracted by the invoice subtotal. So now, looking at the pivot grid, I can quickly see for each individual client, I've set it up by the client, by the project, and the job. And then I'm looking at my estimated amount, original quote, versus what I've invoiced, and the remainder between the difference between those two. So you can see for Amazon, we have $13,000 of work that we've quoted, but we didn't invoice anything, and therefore we still have $13,000 remainder to be invoiced. So you can expand this to take a look at the details of which job they are. Note that my system does have sample data. All of these data are fake, so your system will show real data. So in this case, for Great Atlantic Insurance, you can take a look at the branding campaign. These are the 5 different deliverables, what you originally quoted, what you've invoiced, and the remainder that you have yet to invoice. Okay. Yeah, so that's all those are kind of the most common reports I probably hear on a daily basis from various agencies that I have built. Once again, if you have any specific reports that you want us to take a look at, or if you're not too sure, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do our best to help you out. And if you have questions in regarding to kind of your account, whether your account is how you can add premium reports or things along those lines onto your subscription, please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly about that, and we'll take a look. But yeah, Sophie, hope that gives everyone an idea of our reporting capabilities and related to real life examples.
Yeah, that was absolutely wonderful, Jimmy. You know, I always love hearing from you on some of the reporting and how you've built it. Your brain definitely works that way, and I always love hearing from you. So thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through some of those. I have had quite a few questions just coming through, again, regarding the premium features for the reporting. This will depend on your current subscription that you have with us here at Function Point. So please feel free to reach out to the success team, and we're here to assist you with that, especially with any other questions that you have around the new reporting. So to reach us, it's just success@functionpoint.com. I will be staying on for another few minutes just to continue answering the questions that are coming through right now. But if you know later on, once the webinar is completed, you do still have access to our entire team to help, because you know it's a really exciting new feature, and we want to make sure that you are using it in the ways that you are hoping to be able to. So please feel free. Again, we will also be sending a follow-up email that will be having this recording within it, as well as the user doc for the new BI reporting. Again, Jimmy, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a while since we've done a webinar together, and that was super fun. So thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to help.
Okay, great. All right, so enjoy, everyone, and if you have, please, again, continue to send questions through. I'll stay on for about another few minutes. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your Thursday, and have a happy weekend.